Hello, everybody. We've reached the last day of teaching for this unit, which is Unit 4, Day 8. And today we're going to talk about Manifest Destiny. Now, Manifest Destiny was a phrase coined by John L. O'Sullivan. And basically what it meant was it put into words something that a lot of Americans had felt in the first place, which was the idea that it was the destiny of the United States to extend from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And this is something that people had thought for a long time in this country, that it was God's destiny for us to have all of this land. And really, by creating the term manifest destiny, he finally put into words the feeling that a lot of people had, with the idea that we should move out west. You're going to see in the third slide, in the slides presentation, that there is a painting of an angel that usually represents manifest destiny. And you can see in that painting, she's leading the people out to the west. She's actually carrying a telegraph line with her as she is leading people out to the west. So this was the idea Americans had. They thought that, hey, inevitably, all that land out to the west is going to become ours. Now, that's going to lead to several conflicts, the first of those being the Texas War for Independence. That would be a war of Texas versus Mexico. And technically during that time, Texas was part of Mexico. But Texas decides, after many Americans had moved to Texas because Mexico had been very welcoming to Americans coming into Texas, they decide to clamp down and change their constitution, and that would lead Texas to declaring independence from Mexico. Now, with that, of course, Mexico isn't going to just let Texas go. That leads to a war between Mexico and Texas, which Texas would, of course, eventually win. Probably the most famous battle of it that most Americans know of is the Alamo, in which you have a group of 100 or so Americans who make a final stand against the Mexican army. They would eventually all be killed. And among the numbers killed would be men like Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie, and other famous Americans who would be killed, but eventually Texans would win that. And Texas would go on to become their own country for almost 10 years before they would be annexed and become part of the United States. Now, with Texas becoming part of the United States, you got to realize there were still a lot of border issues in place with Mexico, a lot of areas that Mexico claimed that Texas said were part of them. And that is what is going to lead to the Mexican-American War. Again, difference: Texas War for Independence, Texas versus Mexico. Mexican-American War is going to be Mexico versus the United States. And really, the whole reason this war was fought was over the battle over territory and the United States wanting territory that they believed was theirs. Now, as far as the war goes, Mexico was not prepared to fight the United States and would be quickly and easily defeated by U.S. armies who would quickly drive all the way to Mexico City. At the end of the war, you are going to see that we get what is known as the Mexican Cession, which includes California, Nevada, New Mexico, and a bunch of area there in the West. Eventually, the United States would pay Mexico for that as kind of like I'm sorry for taking that land. They would pay them for that land. Another big impact of the Mexican-American War is that it's really going to be the training ground for a lot of soldiers that are going to fight in the Civil War 20 or so years after the Mexican-American War. A lot of guys, including like Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and other famous guys that you hear about fighting in the Civil War would fight in the Mexican-American War. Now, with Manifest Destiny, it's also going to have an effect on politics, which you'll read about in the presentation here. It's going to have an effect on the elections during this time as well, and what candidates talk about as they talk about moving out west. So, with Manifest Destiny, that brings us to the end of this unit. I try to keep it light as far as what you're doing today, so you just have a little article to read and answer a question on, and then your test review, and of course your daily quiz that you get into there as well. So Manifest Destiny, again, something we will actually kick off the next unit, still talking about Manifest Destiny and talking about the effect of these wars, because these wars are going to have a way, especially the Mexican-American War, of causing a good amount of conflict here in the United States. So read through that slides presentation. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic day.